Let me give you an example of two executive summaries. And since the font is so small, I'll read it from here. The first one is called Electronic Components. And let me read it to you if you can't see it on the screen. Electronic Components, Inc. is a startup company that will make a variety of electronic components, beginning with a new type of aluminum-based capacitor. The unique product, coupled with an excessive demand for capacitor devices, will provide us with an ample share of the capacitor market and numerous opportunities for expansion into related electronic components. Everybody on board? Okay, this is a real one. Okay. The founders are dedicated and determined to make the venture a successful and profitable entity. Whew, that's good to know. I thought they were just doing this for fun. Technical expertise is provided by James F. Lynch, who has been involved in designing capacitors for 11 years. He obtained a Bachelor of Science in Electronic Engineering from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. That alone is probably going to get him the experience and the fact he's MIT will overcome all of the other deficiencies here, which is I don't think most people would understand what it is he's proposing to do. Do you know what they propose to do? I mean, what is excessive demand for capacitors? Why? Why is there excessive demand? How big is the market? So, and if you read the rest of it, which I suggest you do when you get the slides, it reads a bit like a grant proposal. There is a good thing in here that says that they've actually put their own money in. So the guy's committed. Now, this is an example of something where there's probably, given the nature of the person involved, there's probably a lot of substance underneath, but it's not doing a very good service in trying to convey it. So that's sort of a shame, because there's so many plans you read which don't have any substance behind them, and yet they read a lot better. So we got to figure out how to make things better. Now, the other one, by way of contrast, is People's Express. This was sort of, well, let me read it. The eastern seaboard of the United States is ripe for the entry of a new, super-efficient, low-cost air carrier to provide quick, reliable intercity air transportation. Such an entity would bring to the Northeast the same benefits that have accrued to other areas of the United States. Chief among these are frequent jet commuter service between major cities, prices competitive with private automobiles, fulfillment of the congressional goals, and enacting the Airline Deregulation Act. The new company will be able to achieve these goals for the following reasons: aggressive, innovative management that's been tested in the field, equipment and facilities designed specifically for low-cost production of air transportation, manpower selected, trained, and motivated to be efficient and profit-oriented, read between the lines, non-union probably, and new systems to be applied to the entire business. Now, if you look at those two executive summaries, I think most people would think that the People's Express, which was sort of the early version of what we now call JetBlue, is a lot clearer to understand what it is. I mean, it's got, you can pretty much see what they're doing. They're experienced guys. They've thought about how to design it, and you could start having a discussion around this in a lot more detail than you would with the electronic components. So the trick is to end up having an executive summary that looks more like the People Express than one that just wastes a lot of words and doesn't get to what you're supposed to be doing. This is a Virtual Inc. executive summary, which you'll see. Again, it's not exactly the model, but look at it. It was put this way into the 50K at the time. And you decide yourself whether you think it's a good executive summary as part of your assignment. Okay, so let's move into the body of the plan. And when I say the plan, I mean when you're in your planning process also. So the question is, what is the opportunity you're going after, or what is the problem you're trying to solve? How big is it? What's the opportunity now? What's going to happen over time? And why is this the right time for the product or service? This reminds me, in the 100K, there's the 50K back in there one year, we had a semifinal awards thing, here are the semifinal teams. And one team came up and said, I guess you guys didn't like our plan. Now, back in those days, we didn't actually know who the people were. That was part of it. They were all no names. We just looked at the ideas. And I said, well, I don't actually know what yours was. And he said, well, we were the guys with the air traffic control system improvement. And it was a fascinating plan. It was, they had figured out how to make it more efficient, and I learned a lot of things about air traffic control systems. And I said, the problem is, none of us could see how that could be a business. I mean, you have to change the entire air traffic control system, it appeared, in the United States. I mean, it looked like a great solution, but, is it a business? And they said, well, didn't you know that the Federal Aeronautics Administration, FAA, has put out a request for proposal for changing the air traffic control system in the United States? No. Why would I know that? They had assumed everyone knew that. That would have changed the whole complexion. That meant at that time, the convergence of a driver for the business was there, and they didn't tell us that, so they didn't get another opportunity. In the healthcare area, for many years, we'd see really interesting technologies that could improve outcomes for patients, and the question was, well, who was going to pay for it? And a couple of years ago, Medicare put in some rules that said that hospitals get penalized if patients get readmitted. That's opened up a huge opportunity for things like home monitoring or other kinds of things that before would be very hard to see how that was going to work. So there are a lot of new companies trying to figure out how they can do things to finally help patients for better outcomes. There wouldn't be a market for that 5 years ago. It would be a long, hard uphill climb. So why is this the right time? As I said, I've been on the bleeding edge of some of this stuff. The body of the plan, they should talk about the market, who's there. We'll go into more detail with Bob about talking about customers. Investors have these different ways of thinking of things, and one of the questions that surprised me early on in my career was a VC that said, okay, I get it. You got a great idea, but let's say you do everything that you said and you win. Who loses, and what are they going to do about it? And we hadn't thought about that. So you got to think about, you're disrupting a market, for example. What's the response be? The incumbents are just going to sit there? So what's your plan for thinking it through? That's an example of planning process. These are the kind of questions, again, with Bob Jones tomorrow night, we'll go into pricing and distribution and sales tactics. And another VC expression is, will the dogs eat the dog food? So, all right, it sounds like a great thing. You convinced me it's a great thing, but what evidence do you have that anyone wants it? That's, customers. Will the dogs eat the dog food? Now, the development plan is how do you piece the different components together in order to make something that can work within the time constraint you have as a startup. You don't want nuclear fusion, right? Nuclear fusion we've been working on for 50, 70 years now. And the problem is if you've got a nuclear fusion kind of project, is until it completely works, nothing works. So there's really not a business. Is there a way you can take a portion of it and make it work? I looked at Zipcar early on. Everyone's familiar with Zipcar? Fascinating concept. It's sort of revolutionized a whole bunch of transportation thing. But there were so many moving parts that you had to put together in order to make that work. At a place like MIT where the joke is if you're recruiting a faculty member, you can have one of three things. You can have tenure, the Nobel Prize, or parking. Right? So parking is what everyone picks. Right? So here's a company, Zipcar, that's got to figure out how to get parking places. There are a lot of things that were out of their control. And at the end of the day, it may not have been a good investment. I mean, it may have changed things, but I don't think a lot of people made a lot of money in Zipcar. So you want to try to think through, do you have to change the world totally in order to make a dent in the world? Because again, limited time.